Nathan Baird from the Indy Star.
Sam King from the Journal and Courier.
We are at Chrysler Arena in Ann Arbor following Purdue's 75-73 loss to Michigan. Purdue falls out of first place. Michigan jumps back over them into first place, so they're a half game up on Purdue. Michigan State loses to Indiana at home, kind of a stunner, and so now they fall another half game back of that, or maybe even a full game back of Michigan,
They're
whatever.
Full game back in Michigan and a half game behind Purdue.
Right, exactly. That's what I meant. So yeah, you've got this staggered trifecta atop the Big Ten now, and a game where just whatever it was 18 days ago or 20 some days ago at Mackey Arena, Purdue really just came out and gave Michigan no chance to do what it did today, which was make decisive plays down the stretch. They owned that game in a way that I think surprised even Purdue and its staff to the way that they just dominated that game. And here they led. They didn't for almost 35 minutes of this game. Michigan didn't take a lead until I think there was like 5 minutes or so to go in this game. They only led for about 3 minutes of this game, and yet they're the ones standing in first place.
Yeah, and I think what gets lost in this whole game, and I asked Matt Painter this after the game, is the fact that Purdue led by 11 with like 3.5 minutes to go in the first half, and it felt like a pivotal point where you can really stomp on Michigan's throat. And if you're up by 15 points at halftime, you got a little leeway to make some mistakes and things of that sort in the second half. Instead, I think Purdue goes 0 for 5 from the field to end the half, and Trey Kaufman-Renn picks up a foul and is not in the game during that stretch, and Michigan ends on a 9-0 run. Now, Purdue did get the lead back up to 10 in the second half, but that was really a chance there where Michigan got some momentum going into the second half and kind of knew it could make this a game down the stretch.
Yeah, I was glad you brought that up after the game because I thought that was a pivotal stretch. And another example now, and it's been a few of them, where Trey Kaufman-Renn has foul trouble. There, it's not like massive foul trouble. He picked up a second foul, so he's set for the final few minutes of the first half. But Purdue went, I think, the final 3:46 or something like that without scoring to end that half, and that's where that 9-0 run happened. And when he comes out of the game, and it seems like it's exasperated when it's because of foul trouble. Obviously he comes out of the game sometimes, and Purdue it's for brief periods, and Purdue can get through those. It doesn't feel like a catastrophe. But when he comes out for foul trouble and has to sit for a stretch, it's just the stagnation that this offense experiences in those stretches is a problem. It puts everything on Braden Smith to kind of go create because his partner in crime is no longer on the floor. It decreases the chances that you'll get those kickouts that Trey Kaufman-Renn is great at doing, finding Fletcher Lawyer, finding other people, finding Braden Smith. All of that stuff just seems to kind of seize up in those moments. And I want to go back and track just what those offenses look like in those stretches. The Iowa game, the Indiana game, the first half of that game. It's a problem. And I asked Matt Painter about it after the Iowa game, and his response was mostly just like, Trey Kaufman-Renn has to quit fouling. Okay, that's fine, but this is also college basketball. Sometimes you're going to be, for instance, playing on the road and get some unfriendly calls, and now all of a sudden he is in foul trouble. By the way, teams are going to come and attack him to try to get him in foul trouble. I feel like this team does need a better response when he is in those foul trouble situations.
Yeah, and this is a thing that I talked to Zach Edey about 2 years ago. I know they're two totally different players, but a couple years ago, people will forget this now because he was still good last year at not fouling. Zach Edey got in foul trouble quite a bit, and he finally was like, I will give up a layup rather than foul because I'm more important. I'm worth the 2 points that I'm going to give up staying on the court. And I feel like Trey Kaufman-Renn is kind of in that same scenario. Now he got in foul trouble, and immediately Michigan went at him twice in a row with him in the game in foul trouble. So there has to be some sort of balancing act there where you're still playing defense, but you maybe not aggressively playing defense. I think that he just can't afford to have him out of the game. And Matt Painter said he played 30 minutes. That's what he averages. It's different when you're playing 30 minutes and you're dictating when he comes in and out versus when he has to come in and out.
Exactly. But he did, I'd say at the same time, at some point he has to stay out there. Like he has to go out and stay out there. And the fouls, listen, I'm sure there are Purdue fans, some of you who are watching, who disagree with any number of calls that happened in this game. I'm really not going to go down. I don't think we should go down that road unless you want to go back and adjudicate every close game that was played at Mackey Arena and who the calls went for and against. Like it's home cooking, but everybody has eaten that meal at Mackey Arena at some point too.
I wrote that in my post game. I said Purdue has benefited from the same circumstances at home.
Yes, and Matt Painter, going back as long as I've known the guy and covered this team several years ago, he's always talked about it's just human nature. It's psychology. If officials call games differently for the home team, that's going to cost you a couple points. You've got to overcome it. That's just part of the challenge of winning on the road in the Big Ten. And at the same time, the fouls mattered tonight because it kept Trakoff and Wren and Caleb First off the floor for important stretches of the game. It cost them from a rebounding perspective. It costs them defensively. And it definitely costs them offensively in the ways I was talking about. But it also costs in the accumulation of fouls. Ends up being a 2-point game. Michigan was 8 of 8 on 1-on-1s in this game. Purdue was 0 for 1. And that was the one that Raleigh Burgess took. Right. And I went back and looked.
It would not even have been in the game in that situation.
Right. Raleigh Burgess coming in this game had attempted 16 free throws over 8 games. The average score of the games in which he shot free throws was like 24.4 points. The average final differential. Like he had never been in a moment like that where they're down by 4. He needs to try to make 2 to make it a 2-point game, and he misses the front end. They go down and score. Now it's a 6-point game, and Purdue has a lot of ground to try to make up in a short amount of time.
Put back dunk, I believe.
They did, yes.
It was even more valuable with Caleb First not on the floor
exactly.
or Trey Kaufman not on the floor.
Both of them having fouled out at that point. Exactly. It was the accumulation was the problem more than any one thing, and I don't think you can put that on. Caleb First was, I think, pretty magnanimous about it after the game. Trakoff and Wren, now that we've had to ask him about this several times, and we're going to write more about this, I'm sure, later this week. Like, he is frustrated. He feels like he's not getting the benefit of calls, and at the same time that Matt Painter has also, especially after that Iowa game, like I said, it's like, and after the Indiana game, he's like, nope, those moving screens were moving screens. He's got to stop doing that. I can't remember what exactly it was he was doing in Iowa, but he was still kind of saying, like, he's got to stop committing fouls. And tonight it was more, those 5 fouls came from so many different ways that I don't think we were going to – Matt Painter was like, I can't tell you that right now. I'd have to go back and look at all of them because they were from a bunch of different things. But some of them were happening just on rebounding opportunities. I think the one that fouled him out was he committed a turnover at one end, which is something he himself said, like, I made a bad play there. He was talking about plays he made that helped cost him the game down the stretch. That turnover where Cam Heide got tied up with the guy, it goes down to the other end, and he gets called for, I think, his 5th foul on a rebounding opportunity. It's just there were a lot of those today. Him and First both getting a lot of fouls on rebounding.
Yeah, and like we said, those things – 50-50 calls at Mackey Arena probably get called in Purdue's favor. Here, they get called in Michigan's favor. That's not probably why Purdue lost this game. There's a lot of reasons. The turnovers, Kaufman Wren had 5 by himself. You can't do that on the road. You can't have 11 turnovers, miss 39 shots, and then kind of leave it up to chance with officiating and things of that nature. So Purdue, was probably to blame for this. What hurts more is, like Nathan said, when we started this, Michigan State losing at Indiana, or Indiana beating Michigan State at Breslin. Right. Purdue really had a chance to open the door.
To be a game and a half up with 6 or 7 games left, depending on which team it is, 7-8. Like, it was a big opportunity to kind of take a foothold. And then you buy yourself that much more leeway going up to Michigan State on next Tuesday. Because now that game becomes like, not the be-all, end-all. And by the way, Michigan State has to go to Illinois before Purdue comes and plays there. That's never an easy place to try to win, as much as they've been up and down. But now Michigan State is too. Like, it was a missed opportunity tonight to, like, sort of seize control. I think the bigger thing from my perspective is, how do you still respond to this? Because, yes, it's late in the season, but it's only a half game. You've played one more game than Michigan has. Michigan has more that it has to go through here down the stretch. You don't get to play them again, but they've got some other tough games.
Michigan is now 10-2 and Purdue's 11-3, so played 2 more games.
Right? I don't think that's right. I think Michigan's 11-2 now. Okay. I think because they were only separated by half game coming into this. They had one more win. They were tied in the loss column. Purdue was 11-2, Michigan was 10-2. But I think it's the response is going to decide whether Purdue wins a championship. I don't think this game, I could be wrong. Maybe it turns out that these 2 points and those fouls decide the championship. But I think it's just as likely that if Purdue finds a way to keep Trakoff and Wren on the court, which I guess is Trakoff and Wren doing that, and if it also finds a way to clean up some things offensively. The turnovers have not really been that big of an issue in either this game or the first loss, or the first game against Michigan. They had 6, and Michigan had 22. Like, that went one of the many ways that game went very heavily in their favor. But it's just little things. Like, I asked Matt Painter after the game, like, they get outscored 21-0 on bench points, and he points out, well, the right guys were shooting. He's not wrong. Like, I think it was 61 points on 51 shots for the big 3. But the other 6 players who played, I think they were 4 of 18, no assists, and 5 turnovers or something like that. Like, that's just in a game. By and large, yes, you got the production and the efficiency you wanted from your main guys. The other part of that is not enough offensive efficiency on a night where you actually were asking a little bit more from your bench because of what was going on with Kaufman Wren in first.
Yeah, and listen, this you talk about the 2 points made at the end be costly. I think it's just as big a deal that people forget about it now. Purdue opened the Big Ten season losing at a bad Penn State team, as it turns out.
Yeah.
But I think the one that if Purdue doesn't win this Big Ten title, stick out is the leading by 16 at Mackey Arena against Ohio State and not winning that game. I think that's the one that right now, if you say Purdue ends up losing the Big Ten championship by 1 game, that's the one you circle and say that's where it probably turned.
And that's why you're trying to get one in your opponent's home arena, because especially the ones that you're right there with. So I think next week at Breslin, I remember we did kind of a discussion going into the Big Ten season and talking about how important we thought that Michigan State game was going to be. And I think it is now lining up to be every bit as important as we thought it would be, because that's the only chance. Like, this only neutralizes Purdue with Michigan, because they got the win at home. They lose here. Okay, it washes out. This is the only shot they get at Michigan State. It comes on their floor. Who knows? Maybe Tom Izzo is still looking to break Bob Knight's record if they can't win in Champaign later this week. He's tied right now. They thought they were going to break it against Indiana. Somehow they didn't. I didn't watch the whole game, but and they made it close. But Indiana found a way to win there. And now that puts, the opportunity is there for Purdue to reverse some of this. But it's the only shot they get at Michigan State.
But before that, you've got to win against Wisconsin at home.
Yeah, you can't take that for granted. Right. No, and Wisconsin's been very good this season. This is where you win championships. And I don't think this game necessarily loses you the championship, but it's, do you find a way to, when you're in this position the next time, not make some of those same mistakes?
In the last 2 years, listen, Purdue a couple of years ago stubbed its toe, losing, I think, 3 or 4 in the middle of the Big Ten season, or maybe even the latter half, but had such a gigantic advantage over the rest of the field that, it ended up not making that much of a difference. Last year, Purdue ran away from almost start to finish, despite the early loss to Northwestern, and ran away with the Big Ten title. Now, a lot of these guys have won 2 Big Ten championships, but they've not had to do it where they had to catch up and, take the title away from somebody. They've been comfortably ahead because of the way they played throughout the season. So it is a different feel to try to get to a Big Ten championship than what they're accustomed to.
Exactly. So now it just comes down to how do you bounce back from this? You have to change and play a very different kind of opponent against Wisconsin on Saturday. That'll be a home game at Mackey Arena. And then 2 road games next week that right now, that looks like it could be the week where a lot of things maybe get settled. Like, you decide whether you're still in the race after that or not, because you got to go at Michigan State and you got to go at Indiana, which tonight beat Michigan State. And that's always a tough place to try to go play, as Michigan found out on Saturday when they went up there and had a big lead and almost blew it. So we'll wrap that up from Chrysler Arena tonight. Sam King, I'm Nathan Baird. We'll be back with more Boilers Extra, and we got more football to talk about here in the coming weeks, more from Barry Odom, hopefully, and starting to get with the assistant coaches. But obviously, just on a day-to-day basis, a lot to talk about with this basketball team. Thanks for joining us.